Hey everybody, this is Rob at the Body Project Studio in Eagan, and today I want to be talking about, or I'm going to be talking about positive mindset. And the positive mindset is actually the first block in my pyramid. And a lot of times people will say, well, what does mindset have to do with your physiology, how you look, how you feel, and how you're performing? Well, it has a lot to do with it. And hopefully by the end of this video, you're going to have more clarity of really how important it is. What I want to do is kind of recap, what we covered yesterday in the video. And I talked a little bit about, we're certainly in the information age today, but unfortunately, we're also in the misinformation age. And there's so many people that have voices today on the internet. So there's multiple blogs, there's people starting YouTube channels, there's guys like me doing Facebook Live. So you've got a lot of opportunity to really seek out information. But one of the things I want to caution you on is making sure you really trust the information, because I'm always, I think from day one, I haven't been an information seeker. I've really been more of a truth seeker. And I just want the right answer. And whether that's mindset or whether that's on nutrition, whether that's on fitness, you can really have a conversation with someone in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or watch them, and you can really have a pretty good understanding pretty quickly if they know what they're talking about or not. And the one thing is, whether you're talking about a group of exercise physiologists, a group of nutritionists, naturopathic doctors, you get 10 people in the same room, they're gonna have different opinions. I mean, that goes without question. So what we have to do is kind of learn to navigate through, I guess, the sea of information. I mean, we are drowning today in information, but I think we're really starving for wisdom. And so I think that, after 27 years in the industry, I look at how much I know, but then I really think about how little I know. And that's someone who spent, basically my whole adult life, and I'm very passionate about the subject matter. But it just goes to show you there's so much information to know about the body. And today we are bombarded with not only more information, but we have more landmines we have to sidestep, more toxicity we have to deal with, our food supplies, drugs, chemicals. There's so many things that are stressing on our body, so many things stressing out our nervous system. There's emotional stress, there's electrochemical stress. So we have to learn again to be able to navigate through these things. And, I talked a little bit yesterday about the focus in a lot of these exercise programs, and it's really about how many calories can I burn. This 500, 700, 1,000 calories in this particular workout. And that's kind of the big pitch that a lot of these places have. And, although there's benefits to some of those things, I think we get so caught up in gathering data on smartwatches or smart devices that we get further and further away from really tapping into our kinesthetic gifts. So, you think about our sixth sense, our intuition, our inner wisdom, if you will. And technology's good, right? But sometimes we get further and further away from our internal wisdom. And so I want you to think, when you're doing an exercise program, start paying attention to your body and not so much to the watch. And if we take a look at today, because things are so driven based on those data points, people get further and further away from restoring optimal functionality to the body. Now, at the bottom of the pyramid, I talk about the 7 major movement patterns. And you have to make sure you have all of these 7 patterns in your routine. We have to be able to squat, we have to be able to bend, we have to be able to push, pull, lunge, twist. And then when we think about gait, we've got jogging, walking, running. If you can't do any of those movement patterns without pain, we have have to identify why you're in pain when you move in that specific pattern. So it's important to restore functionality first and foremost before we go any other place. So another thing that we talked a little bit about was, one of the questions was, what do you think about yoga? What do you think about Pilates? And I gave my take on yoga, and I love yoga. Yoga is just such a beautiful art form and such an incredible healing tool if you've got the right instruction and you've got the right methodology being taught. Remember, there's working out, okay? And that's what most people are familiar with. And then there's working in. When we're working out, we're expending life force, energy, chi, prana, whatever you want to call it. But we have to make sure we're doing things to cultivate our life force. And that's where restorative yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, those are things that are going to really restore, really fill our energy tank. And so if we think of our body like a bucket, there's certain things that'll really empty our buckets, and then other things that'll fill it. And we have a lot of things that are emptying our buckets today, a lot of things that are emptying our buckets. So we got to just really take a look at our body and our minds as a holistic unit. We can't separate our mind from our body. We are connected. We are one. So that's why mindset can really control your physiology. And there's a tremendous book called The Biology of Belief, and it really talks about the power of the mind in your healing capacities. And it's a heavy read, but it's a great read. Another thing people oftentimes will kind of gravitate towards because it gets a lot of, I guess, maybe hype. It's fabulous, again, if done correctly, and that's Pilates. But people will say, hey, what do you think of me doing Pilates? Well, it's not that Pilates is good or bad. We have to ask a qualifying question: is Pilates good for me? Is it right for me? And Pilates is all about, obviously, the core. And the core is a very, very complex area. In fact, when I'm doing rehabilitation assessments, and really physiological assessments, what I'm looking for is the functionality of how does someone breathe and what is the function of the core. All human movement emanates from the core, meaning you move an arm, you move a leg, you go to bend over, about 30 milliseconds before you move an arm, your brain should signal your core, support and stabilize my spine to provide a good, strong working foundation for my arms. And 100 milliseconds before the legs move, you'll get that same signaling. Well, again, because the core is so complex, if that's not functioning optimally, then it doesn't matter what exercise you do, you're going to create oftentimes more dysfunction. And when I'm doing assessments, if I have someone laying on their back, and then I have their legs up in a vertical position, what I'm testing is the function of their lower abdominals. As they start to lower their legs, can they still maintain contact with my finger that's on the back? So if you find your belly button, you wrap that around, that's your third lumbar. So I'll have my finger on their third lumbar. So you should be able to get down to about 15 degrees. Most people lose it at about 70 to 75 degrees. So if you think about Pilates and they're doing a lot of leg raises, or if you're doing leg raises in terms of your abdominal conditioning, most people really are not working all four abdominal muscles like they should be. They're only working one of the abdominal muscles called the rectus abdominis. And so what happens is then the hips, so the hip flexors here get overly tight. And then what happens is the pelvis drops and it creates a greater propensity for low back issues. And so is Pilates good? Yeah, well, if it's in the right hands and you've got a qualified instructor, and if you have a fully functional abdominal wall. Now, I can tell you, I can count on one hand how many women that I've assessed that have gone through pregnancy that have a fully functional abdominal wall. Why? because we have cesareans, we have episiotomy scars, we have hysterectomy scars. And if you think of a nerve pathway like a hose, from your brain, it's going to signal this musculature to support and stabilize the spine. Well, if I kink that hose, am I going to have an increase or a decrease in flow if I kink the hose? Right, I'm going to have a decrease. So if I have a decrease and it's innervating this muscle right here, is that muscle going to get stronger or is it going to get weaker? It's going to get weaker. So if I raise my arm out to the side, that's being innervated by two separate nerve pathways. I have a primary and I have a secondary. The abdominals have 9 sources of nerve innervation. So it's so complex, and very few people have, again, fully functional abdominal walls. So we have to be so careful in our exercise selection, because in an effort to get better, most people are actually getting injured. And then you know what happens? They end up at an orthopedic surgeon and they do some imaging and they say, well, you know, it looks like we've got a herniation or a bulging disc. You know, we could go in and do this surgical procedure. And there's no money in postural restoration. There's no money in restoring core function. The money's in the surgery and the money's in the drugs. And so we have to take a much deeper look, and we have to, I think, really take it upon ourselves. We've got one body. You only get one body. You get one shot at this, right? So you can cut and carve and be drugged, and that is a choice. And there are times when surgical intervention is necessary, but you know, 80% of the orthopedic problems today that I see would not have even have to been done had people known how to restore balance and harmony back into their bodies. So that's my rant on that. Another thing we talked about is variety versus mastery. Today, I think more than ever, people want, you know, they want creative things, they want fun things, they want a number of different things, instead of really focusing on the mastery and the execution of the correct form, the correct mechanics of their bodies. And so one of the things I would caution you on is focus more on mastery than variety, because if you just are getting all kinds of different variety, you're never going to reach a level of mastery. And if you don't reach a level of mastery, chances are very, very high, probability goes up more and more, and eventually it leads to injury. So please make sure when you're looking at exercise, instead of saying, oh, this is boring, just say, you know what, this is something I really want to master. Sometimes I will do the same routine for 3 months, 6 months. I've done the same routine for a year before. And I've been doing this for over 30 years. And I'm still in search of the perfect repetition. And there's so many things that I know I can do better. And I've been making this a study and a practice for a long time. So I think if you go into it with that mindset, it's really a game changer. So change your mindset on that. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, you know, the 4 doctors, and getting into mindset. Before I get into mindset, in terms of the 4 doctors, Hippocrates once said there's only 4 doctors that you really need. What Hippocrates actually said there's only 3 doctors you'll ever need: Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Happiness. And back in the day of Hippocrates, when he came up with those 3 doctors, you know, obviously it was a very active society, and people were very active, whether it was farming, whether it was, you know, cleaning their clothes, walking, you know, people were very active. And so one of my mentors added Dr. Movement in. And of course, we're going through the process of Dr. Movement, but Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Happiness are critical components to a healthy, happy body. And we're going to talk a little bit later on in other videos about some of the other doctors. But let's get into mindset. So why is it important, and what does it have to do with our bodies? And then we think about how many thoughts the average person has on a regular basis. And I was reading the other day that the average person thinks anywhere from 16 to as many as 16 to as many as 60,000 thoughts a day. Now you think about that. As many as 60,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. But what blew me away is 98% of those thoughts are repeated thoughts from the day before and the day before and the day before. I mean, talk about being creatures of habit. You know, we tend to run the same patterns over and over. And so if you think about that, 60,000 thoughts, 98% are the same thoughts. And another thing, I think this blew me away more than anything, is 80% of our thoughts are negative in nature. That blew me away. And then I started to think about my own thoughts and my own little negative voices that I hear on a daily basis, whether that's trying something new or dealing with a particular situation or circumstance. You know, I think one of our protective mechanisms is we tend to go towards the negative, just as a protective mechanism that goes back, thousands and thousands of years. And so when it comes to our thoughts, we really have to guard our thoughts. And I want you to think about this for a second. We lock our homes at night, we lock our cars, we protect our families, but what are you doing on a daily basis to protect your mind? And I think for a lot of people that watch the news and you think of how negative the news is, or you go through some of these news cycles, everything is so negative. And we have to start really focusing on protecting our minds. And a lot of times people give me a hard time because I don't watch the news, and they're like, wow, you never know what's going on. I said, all I gotta do is ask my clients. My clients always tell me what's going on. And consequently, I always ask them, and then I can filter out the bad stuff. If it's bad stuff, I don't want to hear about it. So, oh, you're one of those guys who buries your head in the sand. No, I'm not one of those people, but I just don't want to hear a lot of negativity. And I think one of the things about it is, I thought for the longest time I was a really super positive person, and then I started to evaluate it closer. I was like, geez, there's a lot of negative talk going on in this noggin of mine. And so I think I want people to understand that, nobody's perfect. And I don't care how successful you are, how good you are at XYZ, or how confident you are. Everyone is going to, maybe have some challenges mentally. And that's just part of growth. It's part of life. And so we just got to overcome it. But what we have to do is we have to really make sure. I love this quote. I remember one of my personal development mentors, he said, miss a meal, but don't miss a learning opportunity. Don't miss your read, meaning, he was a voracious reader, and he said, you always constantly have to feed your mind. But I will say this, you have to really be careful what you're feeding your mind with. I read the other day that, I love to read, so I talk about reading a lot, but I read the other day where the average person reads one book a month. Then I think about it, I usually read anywhere from 3 to 5 books a month. And so I'm thinking, well, that kind of jumps the average, and there's people that read a lot more than I do. But of the people that read a book a month, 50% of those books are trashy novels. So, come on, what's that doing for us? It's entertainment, but are we protecting our minds? Are we growing? So, I remember growing up listening. I'm getting ready in the morning in the bathroom. The bathroom was right next to my parents' bedroom. And I remember listening on the radio to a guy by the name of Earl Nightingale. And for those of you who are old enough to remember maybe the voice of Earl Nightingale, he's one of the fathers of personal development. He just had such an amazing voice and just such amazing wisdom. But that's really where I remember the first time of getting kind of access to that wisdom, that personal development. And I remember him telling a story about this plant closing. And there were people that were they were so freaked out that the plant was closing, and they had been working 25, 30, 35, 40 years at the plant. And when some of them were interviewed, they said, I don't know what I'm going to do. That's all I know. And I just don't know what I'm going to do because I've done this for 30, 35, 40 years. And the one thing that Irwin Nightingale said that it stuck with me all these years is he said, you could teach yourself brain surgery part-time in 35 or 40 years. That was such an aha for me, realizing that it's all mindset. And it's also some of the choices that we make on a daily basis. I mean, we're all given 24 hours in a day. And so what we do with that time, we have to really be careful. We have to guard our times. So I want to caution you with, coming up with the excuse, I don't have enough time. And instead of saying, I don't have enough time, I want you to replace that with, it's not a priority to me. And just see how that feels, okay? Because when I'm working on something and I say I don't have time, and then I replace it with, I haven't made it a priority, it's like, it doesn't feel as good. It's like you can skate with the I don't have time because we all have these crazy busy lifestyles. But if something's really important to you, your family, your friends, your job, your fitness, your health, if it's important to you, you're gonna make the time, right? So another thing growing up is, Dad, you'll love this because I'm sure my dad will be tuning in at some time. But the one thing that really stuck with me all these years is my dad's, he was always focusing on my sister and myself and our attitude. And if I had the old sourpuss attitude, my dad would say, hey, watch the BA. BA was bad attitude. And of course, as a teenager, that's the last thing you want to do is hear your dad talk about attitude. But it's the one thing that's really stuck with me for so many years is the importance of a good attitude. And so thank you, Dad. But I want you to think about this. Think of a person that you've been around or a group of people that you've been around, whether you're talking to them on the phone or you're out to lunch with them, and they're people that drain you. I mean, we've all had people around us that drain us. And there's actually a physiological phenomenon that's happening, is they're literally pulling life force out of us. And so, there's a great saying, love your family, choose your friends. And so we have to make sure that we surround ourselves constantly with positive things, positive books, positive audios, positive people. And that's one thing I love about our community here. We have such upbeat, positive, cheerful people, and it's just so great because it changes everything when you're around positive people. I mean, imagine yourself in a room with 10 negative people or 10 positive people. What would you prefer? I think everybody would prefer the 10 positive people. And so just be careful where you're spending your time and who you're spending your time with. So if we look at the mechanics of exercise and nutrition, all the information that's out there, that's on this side. But then we look at the psychology over here. So even if I give you the perfect plan, I give you the roadmap, this is going to take you to exactly what your goal is. If you don't have the right mindset and you're not ready for a change, it doesn't matter how good the plan is, right? You're just not going to take action. So that's why we have to get the mind right. And I think the number one thing people have to do is really determine their why. Why do you want to get healthier? Why do you want to be more fit? And those of you who have my book, in my bookmark, I actually have a little quote on my bookmark. And I said, I take care of myself today so I can enjoy my magic moments tomorrow. And I'll never forget when my wife and I were in Aspen, Colorado. And those of you who really know me and my wife know that we're very spontaneous and we're not, shall we say, the best planners. And so I'm looking through this, magazine of things to do, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm gonna go hike this mountain tomorrow. Do you want to hike this mountain with me tomorrow? It's called Electric Pass. It's about 13,500 feet. And Paul's like, oh, I'm not feeling very good. Why don't you just do it? And I said, okay. Well, I hadn't hiked that all for who knows how long. And, I just said, you know what? I'm going to go do it anyway. And so it was challenging, but when I got to the top and I'm looking around at all these 14,000 foot peaks, it was just such a magical moment. And it made me realize that's a big why to me. I mean, this is why I do it, because had I not had the physical condition to do that, I wouldn't have been able to enjoy that magic moment. So one of my things that I love to do, I'm passionate about, is hiking. I love to hike. It's probably one of my favorite things to do. So you got to figure out what your magic moment is, whether it's playing with your kids or your grandkids, or you like to do something physically, whether it's playing in a softball league or bowling or what have you. If you can't do something physical and you're on the sidelines, you're missing out so much in life. And so we, I think, have to embrace, the fact that we get one shot at this thing we call life, and we have to make the most of it. And are we getting those times where we're being fulfilled and we're enjoying those magic moments? So I want you to think about some of those things that might be magic moments to you. Now, another thing too is based on where you are physiologically, how you look, how you feel, how you're performing. I have always had kind of a certain threshold that when I get to this point, it's like, oh my gosh, pants are getting a little too tight. What's going on? Not as strong as I used to be. What's going on? So I have a certain threshold. I'm like, okay, enough's enough. I'll eat a little junk food for a little while, and then I'll be like, threshold, hit threshold, put the brakes on, and then it gets my attention. So I think you have to take a look at where is your personal threshold, and maybe try and stretch that threshold and just say, you know what, I'm going to be at this certain weight, I'm not going to exceed it. I'm going to be at this measurement, I'm not going to exceed it. So whether that's a weight goal or a performance goal, just make sure you kind of have a threshold that you're not going to go beyond. Now, another thing too is the difference between must versus should. There's so many times people are like, well, I really should go on a diet, or I should work out a little bit more. But if you make it a must, I must do this because this is my why, here's my magic moments, it's a very different narrative you have with your internal dialogue. So if something's a must, nothing's going to get in your way. If something's a should, you're going to end up shooting all over yourself. So just make sure that you don't shoot all over yourself. And then another thing too is in terms of mindset, just a couple of stories I want to share with you real quick is I'll never forget, we got some really bad news about my wife's father, and he had a heart attack, and you never know how precious family and friends are to you. until you have that scare. And fortunately, he's still a pain in my ass today. He's one of my favorite people in the world. He's just such a great guy. And he had about 15% function of his heart. And, you know, basically what he did is he decided, and one of the things we wanted to do as a family was, you know, really rally around him and be positive with him. And, you know, the thing about it is, you have to be so careful with who you surround yourself with, because it's so easy to just check out at any time. And to make a long story short, he you know, started doing it. He's always been a big walker, and he just started walking more and more, and the doctors were like, well, you can't be walking that much, and, you know, you shouldn't be, you know, mowing your lawn, you shouldn't be walking more than a block. Today he walks 5, 6, 8 miles a day, and he just made it up in his mind that he was going to do that. Well, unfortunately, he went to a checkup, and one of the doctors, after the test they had ran, he said, oh my gosh, I can't even believe you're alive. I can't believe you're standing. I can't even believe you made it here. And it was very alarming to Gary. And the doctor, basically, his opinion was he had no business, you know, walking that far to the appointment, and he shouldn't have been that physical. And Gary had been feeling great up to this point. And he told us later that set him back mentally about a year. He just couldn't get that out of his head, what that doctor had said, that he had no business doing these things, he should have been dead. And the beautiful thing is, because he's got such a great mindset, he's going to defy the odds. And the stuff that he can do and how good he looks, it's amazing of how well he does. And so, keep it up, Gary, because he does so well. Another story is we've got a gal, Kelly Elbers, been a dear client for I think 8 years. She's an amazing person. But Kelly, over the course of 8 years, has had 2 knee replacements. I'm telling you what, a lot of people would have checked out a long time ago and said, you know what, I'm getting older, I got bad knees, I'm just not going to be able to do the things I used to be able to do. But not Kelly. So Kelly did some rehabilitation with us, and she is back. 2 knee replacements, and she is a rock star. She can move better than people half her age. She's a hard worker, she's smart, but she's got such a great mindset. She's so positive, she's so upbeat. Now, were there some tough times? Yeah, she'll tell you there were some tough times. But, you know, tough times don't last, tough people do. We've all heard that saying, right? But in the end, I mean, she is the bionic woman, and she is a rock star. So if you're watching, Cal, love you. Keep up the great work. And then one other story I want to share with you. There's a great story. This gal called because she was in chronic pain with her back, and she had had chronic back pain for years. And she called, made an appointment to get an assessment, and then she ended up calling back and said, oh, I'm not going to be able to make it. She was going to cancel the appointment. So my wife calls her back and said, well, why don't you just come in and have Rob assess you and see what's going on. And so she came in, we assessed her, we rehabilitated her back. She went on to lose over 30 pounds. She now swings the 72-pound Russian kettlebell for 50, 60, 70 reps in a row. She's incredible condition. She's went on to become a certified breath coach. She's a therapist. She's a certified personal trainer. She's amazing. She's behind the camera, running the camera. It's our own Mary Broback. But that's the thing I want you to understand. Sometimes it's in the moment of our decisions that our destiny is shaped. And she made the decision to come in, and her life has forever been changed, and she's helping so many other people with this amazing health journey that she's been on. So Gary, Kelly, Mary, we have so many other great stories out there, but it started with their decision. And then what was really facilitating the process was being around positive people that helped stretch their minds to what was truly possible. And so that's what I want for you, is to make sure you stretch your mind. And if you've got a BS story in your head, change the story and get the most out of what we've all been blessed with. And that's an incredible body. We have so much to be grateful for. If you're going through a challenge right now, you have to understand that there is a way out. There's definitely a solution, and I just wish the best for you all. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about SMART goals, what we need to do, how we need to establish our SMART goals, the power of goals, and how we can strategically reach the goals that we set for ourselves. So if you got anything out of this video, we'd appreciate it if you would share it with a friend or family member that you think might get some benefit from it. Remember, for the next 28 days, I'm going to go through these videos. I'm going to go through my pyramid, talk about each block. I really love and encourage questions. So if you guys have any questions that we can address as I go through the pyramid, I'd love to hear from you. Any questions out there, Mary, that we've got?
Yeah, someone's asking about, like, how do you find time? Everybody's so busy. So do you have a morning ritual, or how do you personally fit in time?
Okay, so, again, getting back to the time thing, we all have 24 hours in the day. But I like the net time. So net time stands for no extra time. And one of my first personal development mentors, Brian Tracy, prayers for you, Brian Tracy. Brian's had some health challenges, but one of my first personal development mentors, he actually said, make your car a university on wheels. And going back to the days of tapes, I always had cassettes playing in my car, and now obviously everything's digitized. So, but I never ever drive to work without something going on, either on mindset or goal setting, anything positive. And my morning ritual, what I started doing is I started getting up an hour earlier, and then it became an hour and a half earlier, and now I get up between 4 and 4:30 every morning to get all my stuff in. And it starts with visualization, and then I go into breath work. I do affirmations. Then I will actually read for some time, and then the last thing, and I would really encourage you all to do this because it's a game changer, is I spend at least 10 minutes watching funny videos, because we all need a little bit more laughter in our lives. And so I heard Arnold Schwarzenegger once say, well, you gotta sleep, X amount of hours, and what do you do? How do you get all this stuff done? He says, you just gotta sleep a little faster. I thought that was pretty funny, sleep a little faster. So, whatever that is to you, I'm not saying you have to get up at 4:30. I hate getting up. I'm serious. I hate getting up at that time. It takes me a while to get going, but you know what? It's such a game changer when you have, there's a great book out there called Miracle Mornings, but establish something in the morning to get your mind started off right. So hopefully you got something out of this video. If you did, again, like it, share it, and then please, if you have any questions, any comments, love to hear what your thoughts are. Until the next video, be well.